My son destroyed me at my wife's funeral. Not with his fists, with his words, in front of 50 people who watched me crumble. Don't expect a dime from Mom's 92 million, Dad. You're just the worthless failure who couldn't save her. Worthless failure. Those words came from the boy I'd raised, sacrificed everything for, loved unconditionally for 26 years. Everyone stared. Some whispered. I stood there in my $15 thrift store suit, watching my own son bury me alongside his mother. But Bradley had no idea what was waiting in that lawyer's office 3 days later. No idea about the envelope that would destroy his perfect little world. See, he thought he knew everything about worth and money and inheritance. He was about to discover he knew nothing about any of it. What happened next will leave you speechless. But let me tell you how we got here. How a marriage counselor's son became so obsessed with wealth that he forgot about love. Bradley wasn't always like this. Growing up, we were close. I was an adjunct professor making $32,000 a year teaching American history at Denver Community College. We lived in a small rental house on Maple Street, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where the refrigerator made sounds like a dying animal. Rosalind worked part-time at a dental office. Bradley wore hand-me-downs from his cousin Jake and brought peanut butter sandwiches to school in brown paper bags we reused until they fell apart. But we were happy. Friday nights were pizza and board games. Saturdays were hiking in the mountains, free entertainment for a family that counted every dollar. Sundays were pancakes and church, where Bradley sang in the children's choir with the voice of an angel. He was smart. Brilliant, actually. Teachers called him gifted. Standardized test scores in the 99th percentile. Full scholarship to Northwestern for business school, which saved us from debt we could never have managed. College changed him. Not immediately. The first year, he called every Sunday. Told us about his classes, his roommate, the dining hall food that wasn't as good as his mother's cooking. He was still our Bradley, excited, curious, grateful for everything. But by sophomore year, the calls became less frequent. Junior year, they practically stopped. "Dad, I'm really busy with networking events," he'd say when I called him. "Victoria's family is having a yacht party next weekend." These connections could change my entire career trajectory. Victoria Ashford, pharmaceutical heiress, old money, private jets, the kind of wealth that doesn't just buy things, it buys access, influence, entire social ecosystems. Bradley graduated summa cum laude in 2018 and landed a job at Morrison & Associates, the largest marketing firm in Chicago. Starting salary, $120,000, more than Rosalind and I made combined. That's when everything changed. "Dad, you need to see this," he called me one Sunday, voice electric with excitement. "I just closed a deal worth $15 million. My commission alone is more than you make in 5 years." I was proud of him, genuinely proud. My son, the first in our family to graduate college, making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. "That's wonderful, son. Your mother and I are so happy for you." "Yeah, about that. I'm bringing someone home for Christmas. Victoria Ashford. Her family owns pharmaceutical companies across the Midwest. This is really important, Dad. Victoria was lovely, polite, well-educated, the kind of person who spoke 3 languages and knew which fork to use for salad. But there was something in the way she looked around our little house. Not mean exactly, more like studying, like an anthropologist observing a primitive culture." At dinner, Bradley kept apologizing. "Sorry about the mismatched plates, Vic. Dad's still using stuff from the 80s. Sorry about the heat being so low. Professor salaries, you know. We're still paying off student loans. Sorry about the wine. It's from a box, but it's actually not terrible." Each apology felt like a small cut, death by 1,000 tiny embarrassments. Victoria smiled graciously through it all, but I caught her texting under the table, probably telling her friends about the quaint little professor family with their thrift store furniture and grocery store wine. After they left, Rosalind was quiet for a long time. "He's embarrassed of us," she finally said. "He's just trying to impress her. Frederick, he introduced you as my father, the part-time teacher to her parents on FaceTime. Not professor, not educator, part-time teacher." She was right, and it got progressively worse. The calls became duty calls. Christmas visits turned into Christmas Eve visits, then Christmas afternoon visits. Always with Victoria, always with subtle apologies for our modest lifestyle, always with the underlying message that this was temporary. Soon he'd be successful enough to leave all this behind. But the real breaking point came when Rosalind got sick. March 2019. Routine mammogram turned into biopsy, turned into the words that change everything. I'm sorry, but it's cancer. Stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive, but treatable with the right intervention. The oncologist was Dr. Hamilton Pierce. Young, confident, expensive watch, BMW in the parking lot, the kind of doctor who made you feel like everything would be fine as long as you could afford his expertise. The treatment protocol will be aggressive, Dr. Pierce explained, spreading x-rays across his mahogany desk like he was dealing cards. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, but the success rate is excellent for someone your wife's age. How much will it cost? With your insurance, maybe $40,000 out of pocket over 18 months. Very manageable for most families. Most families. Not our family. I had $800 in savings. Our checking account usually hovered around $200. We lived paycheck to paycheck, like 60% of Americans, one emergency away from financial catastrophe. That night, I called Bradley. Dad, that's terrible news about Mom. How can I help? Relief flooded through me like cool water. We'll need help with the medical bills. The insurance doesn't cover everything, maybe $20,000 over the next year? Long pause. Background noise, restaurant chatter, clinking glasses. He was at dinner somewhere expensive. Dad, I just bought a condo in Lincoln Park. Victoria and I are planning a wedding for next fall. Money's really tight right now. Money's tight. For someone making 6 figures. But I pressed on. Had to. Bradley, it's your mother. She has cancer. Another pause. Longer this time. I know. And I feel awful about it. But you guys have insurance, right? It should cover most of it. It covers 60%. Then maybe you could take out a loan? Against the house? We didn't own a house. We'd been renting the same place for 12 years. Son, I've been teaching for 20 years. My credit isn't... I don't qualify for large loans. What about a second job? Uber? DoorDash? Lots of people do gig work now to supplement their income. A second job. To save his mother's life. Like it was a minor inconvenience. A temporary budget adjustment. Bradley, your mother has cancer. This isn't about supplementing income. This is about survival. I understand that, Dad. But I can't just... Victoria's family has certain expectations about our financial stability. If I start asking them for money, Victoria's family, their expectations, while his mother was fighting for her life. Forget I asked, I said quietly. Dad, don't be like that. Maybe in a few months, when the wedding expenses are behind us. A few months. His mother might not have a few months. After I hung up, Rosalind took my hand. It's okay, Frederick. We'll figure it out. But I was already figuring it out. The next morning, I applied for every credit card that would have me. Cash advances at 29% interest. Payday loans at rates that should be criminal. I liquidated my tiny retirement account. $12,000 after penalties and taxes. Still wasn't enough. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I took a second job cleaning offices at night for Minutemen Janitorial Services. Minimum wage, 4 hours a night, 6 days a week. Then a third job stocking shelves at King Soopers from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. 20-hour workdays became my new normal. Teach during the day, clean offices at night, stock shelves before dawn. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Bradley found out about the jobs when Victoria's mother saw me mopping floors at her country club. The phone call came 2 days later. Dad, this is humiliating. Victoria's family is asking questions. They don't understand why you're working as a janitor. I'm working as a janitor to pay for your mother's cancer treatment. But it reflects on me. On us. Victoria's father is considering me for a promotion to senior account manager, and having family members in service positions sends the wrong message about my background. Service positions. That's what I'd become to him. Not a father working 3 jobs to save his wife. A service position that reflected poorly on his image. What do you want me to do, Bradley? Maybe Mom could get treatment at a county hospital? Somewhere less expensive? Cancer treatment is cancer treatment, right? county hospital, for his mother, so he wouldn't be embarrassed. Bradley, Dr. Pierce is one of the best oncologists in Colorado. Your mother's life isn't something we should be bargaining with. But Dad, at some point you have to be practical about these things. You're destroying your health, your credit, your future. For what? Maybe an extra year or two? An extra year or two? His mother's life reduced to a cost-benefit analysis. That conversation ended our relationship as I knew it, because that's when I realized my son wasn't just embarrassed by our poverty, he was embarrassed by our love. The call that destroyed our relationship came 8 months later, November 2020, Saturday night. I was grading papers in my studio apartment, the place I'd moved to after losing our rental house to medical debt. Concrete walls, Murphy bed, kitchenette that consisted of a hot plate and a mini fridge. Rent, $450 a month, which was all I could afford after paying Rosalind's medical bills. 23 students in my Introduction to American History class. Most of them working 2 jobs, just like their professor. Most of them struggling to pay for textbooks, just like their professor's family had struggled to pay for cancer treatment. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Bradley. Dad, we need to talk. His tone was different, harder, more confident. The voice of someone who'd made a decision and wasn't interested in discussion. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's finally right. Victoria and I got engaged tonight. Dinner at Le Bernardin, ring from Tiffany, photographer to capture the moment. It was perfect. Congratulations, I'm happy for you both. Are you? Because Victoria's family is asking uncomfortable questions about the wedding guest list. I set down my red pen. The essay I was grading, a sophomore's analysis of the Great Depression, suddenly seemed prophetic. What kind of questions? About you. About why Mom's ex-husband would be invited to our wedding. Ex-husband? Son, your mother and I are separated, not divorced. It's the same thing, Dad. You haven't lived together in almost 2 years. Mom's with Dr. Pierce now. They're talking about marriage. It's time everyone accepted the new reality. New reality. Like our 24-year marriage was just an outdated software version that needed updating. Bradley, what are you really asking me? I'm asking you to understand that Victoria's family moves in certain circles. Her father owns pharmaceutical companies in 6 states. Her uncle is a federal judge. These aren't people who understand complicated family situations. What's complicated about loving someone who's fighting cancer? What's complicated is that you won't let go. Mom has moved on. She's with someone who can actually provide for her. Someone successful, respected, financially stable. But you keep calling the hospital, sending cards, acting like you're still part of her life. Still part of her life. Like 24 years of marriage could be canceled with a separation agreement. Bradley, I call once a week to check on her medical progress. I send birthday cards and get well cards. That's what people do when they love someone. But that's exactly what you shouldn't be doing. That's what makes this whole situation weird and uncomfortable. Long pause. I could hear restaurant noise in the background. He was at some expensive place, probably celebrating his engagement while telling his father to disappear. Dad, I need you to understand something. Mom is with a successful man now, a respected surgeon. I'm engaged to someone from an important family. We're building real lives, adult lives, professional lives, and I'm not part of that. Your part in our story is over. The words hit like a physical blow. Your part in our story is over. What does that mean exactly? It means you did your best for as long as you could. But Mom deserves more than a part-time professor can provide. I deserve more than having to explain why my father cleans toilets for a living. I clean toilets to pay for your mother's cancer treatment. And that's noble, I guess, in a way, but it's also kind of pathetic. Pathetic. My son called loving his mother pathetic. Bradley, Dad, I'm trying to help you here. Dr. Pierce has connections throughout the medical community. He could probably get you a better teaching position somewhere, maybe in Kansas or Nebraska. Somewhere you could start fresh, build a new life, away from all this, away from all this, away from them. You want me to leave Denver? I want you to want what's best for everyone. What's best for Mom is being with someone who can give her the life she deserves. What's best for me is not having to field awkward questions about my family background at professional events. And what's best for me? What's best for you is accepting reality and moving on. I sat there in my studio apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built after losing everything to save the woman I loved, listening to my son explain why I needed to disappear for his convenience. Bradley, let me ask you something. Do you remember when you were 8 years old and broke your arm falling off your bike? Dad, please don't do this. Do you remember who sat in that emergency room with you for 6 hours? Who missed 3 days of work to take you to orthopedic appointments? That's different. Do you remember who helped you with your college applications? Who drove 12 hours through a snowstorm to bring you soup when you had pneumonia your sophomore year? Dad, stop. Who taught you to drive? Who walked you through your first heartbreak when Jenny Morrison broke up with you before prom? Who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself? You're being manipulative. I'm being honest. I'm your father. That doesn't stop because you're embarrassed by my tax bracket. You're not just my father anymore. You're my father who works as a janitor. You're my father who lives in a studio apartment. You're my father who everyone looks at with pity. The truth, finally. So what do you want from me, son? I want you to disappear. Quietly. With dignity. Find someone your own age, your own economic level, your own social class. Start over somewhere else. And if I don't, then you'll find out what it's like to have no family at all. The line went quiet. In the background, I could hear Victoria's voice asking if everything was okay, and Bradley saying, "Yeah, I told him." It went about as well as expected. They'd planned this conversation, rehearsed it probably, maybe even practiced it with Victoria's family, getting their input on the most effective way to cut me out of their lives. Bradley? Yeah, Dad? I want you to remember this phone call, every word of it, because someday when you're older and maybe wiser, you're going to realize what you just threw away. What's that supposed to mean? It means love isn't something you can buy back once you've sold it. I hung up. For the next hour, I sat in my tiny apartment looking at old photo albums. Bradley's first steps, his high school graduation, the day he got accepted to Northwestern, the look of pure joy on his face when he called to tell us about his first promotion. In every picture, I was smiling. Proud father, loving son. How had we gotten from there to here? But as it turned out, that phone call wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of something else entirely. Something Bradley never saw coming. The call that changed everything came 3 months later, at 3:17 a.m. on February 14th, 2021. Valentine's Day. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Mr. Sterling, this is Dr. Sarah Thompson from Memorial Hospital. Your wife has taken a turn for the worse. Ex-wife? I corrected automatically, then immediately felt stupid for maintaining that distinction when someone I loved might be dying. Sir, you're still listed as her emergency contact. The cancer has metastasized to her liver and lungs. We need to discuss treatment options immediately. I was dressed and in my beat-up Honda Civic, the replacement one I'd bought for $800 after selling my decent car to pay medical bills within 15 minutes. Memorial Hospital at 3 a.m. feels like a different planet. Quieter, more desperate, full of people confronting mortality in fluorescent-lit waiting rooms. The oncology wing smelled like industrial disinfectant and the kind of fear that seeps into walls over decades. Room 314 was dimly lit, machines beeping their electronic lullabies around Rosalind's bed. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile in ways that had nothing to do with weight loss. 49 years old, but the cancer had aged her a decade in 18 months. Her eyes opened when I walked in. Frederick? You came. Of course I came. I called Hamilton first. Her voice was barely a whisper, throat raw from medication. He said he'd come in the morning. Had an early surgery to prepare for. An early surgery. While the woman he was supposedly going to marry was potentially dying. But I didn't say that. Didn't need to. I'm here now. Dr. Thompson appeared in the doorway. Kind eyes, tired face, the look of someone who delivered news like this 1,000 times and never gotten used to it. Mr. Sterling, the situation is serious. The cancer has metastasized aggressively. We need to start experimental treatment immediately if we're going to have any chance. What kind of treatment? There's a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins, cutting-edge immunotherapy, very promising preliminary results. But it's expensive, and there's no guarantee your insurance will cover experimental protocols. Of course it was expensive. Everything that might save Rosalind was expensive. The universe seemed determined to make me choose between love and financial survival. How much? $400,000 over 6 months. Insurance might cover 30%, depending on how we classify the treatment. $400,000. I was making $16,000 a year now, after losing 2 of my 3 jobs to exhaustion-related absences. My credit cards were maxed out. My retirement fund was gone. I had $63 in my checking account. But I didn't hesitate. Do it. Dr. Thompson looked surprised. Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should wait for Dr. Pierce. As Mrs. Sterling's partner, he might want to be involved in this decision. He's not here at 3 a.m. when she's scared. Rosalind's hand found mine, weak but warm, familiar despite everything that had happened between us. Over the next week, I watched Dr. Pierce reveal who he really was when the cameras weren't rolling and the social media posts weren't being crafted. He visited twice, both times during normal business hours. Both times he spent more time reviewing charts and talking to doctors about prognosis than talking to Rosalind about how she felt. I, meanwhile, had moved into the hospital, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, eating cafeteria food, showering in the visitor's bathroom. The nursing staff stopped questioning my presence. They'd seen enough families to recognize real devotion when they saw it. On February 20th, Dr. Pierce pulled me aside in the hospital cafeteria. "Frederick, we need to be realistic about this experimental treatment." "What do you mean?" He was wearing a $1,000 suit and a watch that cost more than my annual income. Everything about his appearance screamed success, competence, the kind of man who made smart decisions based on facts and logic. The success rate is 30%. 30% for $400,000. So maybe it's time to focus on quality of life instead of quantity. Make her comfortable. Hospice care. Let her go peacefully instead of putting her through months of aggressive treatment that probably won't work. Let her go peacefully. Give up on her. Hamilton, are you saying we shouldn't try to save her? I'm saying we should be practical. You've already bankrupted yourself once for treatments that barely bought her 18 months. Do you really want to do it again? If it might save her life? Yes. Frederick, look at yourself. You're living in a studio apartment, working minimum wage jobs, aging before your time. Is this really how you want to spend your remaining years? My remaining years. Like I was already dead and just didn't know it yet. This isn't about me. Everything is about someone, Frederick. And right now, you're destroying your future for someone who, let's be honest, chose to be with me instead of you. That night, I sat with Rosalind while she slept. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm, marking time in a place where time felt both infinite and desperately short. At 4 a.m., she woke up. "Frederick? I'm here." "Why are you still here?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was wondering. Like she genuinely couldn't understand why someone would choose to stay in a place this difficult, this heartbreaking, this expensive. "Because I love you." Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Hamilton thinks the experimental treatment is too risky, too expensive. What do you think?" "I think I want to fight." "Then we fight." "We?" "I'm not going anywhere, Rosalind. Not until you tell me to go." She was quiet for a long time, processing something. "I was so wrong about everything, Frederick. I thought money would make me happy. I thought status would protect me from being hurt." "You don't have to explain." "Yes, I do. Because I need you to understand why I made the choices I made, and why I'm about to make different ones." What I discovered next would shatter everything I thought I knew about the past 2 years. It started with a phone call from Lucas Collins, Rosalind's estate attorney, 3 days after Dr. Pierce's realistic conversation about letting her die peacefully. "Mr. Sterling, I need to speak with you about your wife's financial affairs. In private. It's urgent." "Ex-wife," I corrected automatically. "And why me? Shouldn't you be talking to Dr. Pierce? He's been handling her financial matters." "That's exactly what we need to discuss. Can you meet me this afternoon? We met at a Starbucks near the hospital. Lucas looked like Central Casting's idea of an expensive lawyer: silver hair, tailored suit, briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But his expression was troubled, like a man carrying news he didn't want to deliver. "Frederick, how much do you know about your wife's financial situation?" "I know she's broke. All her money went to medical bills over the past 2 years." Lucas opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "That's not entirely accurate." "What do you mean?" "Your wife owns 40% of Sterling Medical Properties. It's a real estate trust her father established in 1987, 6 months before he died. She's been receiving dividend payments for 34 years. I stared at him across the small cafe table. Rosalind never mentioned any trust fund, because she never saw the money. For the past 18 months, the dividend payments have been deposited into an account managed by someone else. Who? Dr. Hamilton Pierce. He's had financial power of attorney over her assets since she moved in with him. The Starbucks suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. How much money are we talking about? Accumulated over 34 years with compound interest and property appreciation? Approximately $92 million. $92 million. The exact amount Bradley had bragged about inheriting. The money he'd assumed was coming to him wasn't some future windfall. It was money that already belonged to his mother. Money that Dr. Pierce had been controlling. Is that legal? The power of attorney is legitimate. Your wife signed it voluntarily. But there are irregularities in how the funds have been managed. Lucas showed me bank statements, investment reports, transfer authorizations, page after page of financial documents that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. But the pattern was clear even to someone like me. Dr. Pierce has been systematically moving your wife's money into accounts under his direct control. Investment funds in his name, real estate purchases, even a life insurance policy. What life insurance policy? $50 million term life policy, taken out 6 months ago. Originally, your son Bradley was listed as the beneficiary. Originally? 3 weeks ago, the beneficiary was changed to Dr. Pierce. The room was spinning. Everything was starting to make a horrible kind of sense. Lucas, does Rosalind know about any of this? No. Dr. Pierce told her the trust fund had been depleted by medical expenses years ago, that she was essentially broke. So she thought I was bankrupting myself to save her when she actually had $90 million. Correct. And Frederick, there's more. I've been investigating Dr. Pierce's background. This isn't the first time he's entered into relationships with wealthy, vulnerable women. Lucas pulled out another folder. Patricia Hendricks, 2018, divorced real estate heiress, early-stage ovarian cancer. Dr. Pierce managed her care and her finances. She died 8 months later. He inherited $12 million. And before that? Jennifer Morrison, 2016, pharmaceutical company executive diagnosed with lymphoma. Similar pattern. Financial power of attorney, systematic asset transfer, death within a year. Pierce inherited $23 million. This is his business model. Appears to be. Wealthy women with serious medical conditions, isolated from their families, dependent on him for both medical and financial guidance. I felt sick. How many others? That I can prove? 4. But I suspect there are more. Lucas closed the folders and looked directly at me. Frederick, your wife is in immediate danger, not just from the cancer. What do you mean? I mean Dr. Pierce has been deliberately steering her away from aggressive treatment, recommending palliative care, hospice care, anything that might expedite the process. You're saying he wants her to die. I'm saying he's already collected $53 million from previous relationships. Your wife's estate would be his biggest score yet. The coffee shop felt like it was closing in around us. Other conversations, normal people discussing normal problems, seemed to come from another planet. What do I do? We need to tell Rosalind everything. Tonight. And we need to move fast, because Dr. Pierce doesn't know that I know about the other cases. Will she believe it? She's been asking questions, getting suspicious about his explanations for why she's supposedly broke while living like a millionaire. Yesterday, she asked me to audit her accounts. Lucas packed up his briefcase. Frederick, there's one more thing. The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins? The $400,000 trial? What about it? It's already been paid for. From your wife's trust fund. Dr. Pierce authorized the payment 2 weeks ago, but he told the hospital to wait for his approval before telling Mrs. Sterling. Why would he do that? Because he wanted to be the hero who found a way to pay for it. Solidify his position as her savior before she got too suspicious about the money. I sat there trying to process everything. Rosalind had $90 million. Dr. Pierce was a serial killer who targeted wealthy cancer patients. The treatment that might save her life was already paid for with her own money. And I had been working myself to death for nothing. Lucas, when do we tell her? Tell her. Tonight, because tomorrow might be too late. I found Rosalind sitting up in bed that evening, more alert than I'd seen her in months. The experimental treatment was already beginning to work. Her color was better, her breathing easier. Frederick, Lucas said he talked to you today. He told me some things. I'm not sure I understand all of them. Sit down, please. I sat in the chair I'd occupied during hundreds of hospital visits over the past 3 years. The same chair where I'd held her hand during chemotherapy, where I'd read her mystery novels during radiation treatments, where I'd watched her sleep off anesthesia after surgery. The same chair where Dr. Pierce had told me to give up on her. I need to tell you what I've learned about Hamilton. About everything. Rosalind, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because I need you to understand why I made the choices I made, and why I'm about to make very different ones. She reached for the bedside table and pulled out a thick folder. Financial documents, bank statements, legal papers. When I moved in with Hamilton 18 months ago, I thought I was doing the right thing. For you, for me, for everyone. You were killing yourself trying to pay for my treatment. Working 3 jobs, borrowing money at ridiculous interest rates, destroying your health and your future. I wanted to help. I know, but I couldn't watch you sacrifice everything for me. Hamilton offered stability, medical expertise, financial security. It seemed like the logical choice. What changed? I started asking questions. About my father's trust fund, about why I never saw any documentation of my medical expenses, about why Hamilton always handled the financial conversations with my doctors. She opened the folder and showed me bank statements. Months of transfers, investments, account movements. Frederick, do you know what Hamilton told me when I asked about the trust fund last month? What? He said it had been depleted years ago, bad investments by my father's financial advisor. He said there was nothing left, that the only reason I could afford cancer treatment was because you were sacrificing everything. But that wasn't true. No, I've had $90 million sitting in accounts I didn't know existed, while I watched you work yourself into exhaustion to pay for treatments that my own money could have covered 100 times over. The anger in her voice was controlled, focused, the kind of rage that comes from complete betrayal. There's more, Frederick. Much more. She pulled out another set of documents. The life insurance policy Hamilton took out. The $50 million one, he said, was for estate planning. What about it? He told me it was to make sure Bradley would be taken care of if something happened to me. The responsible thing to do for a mother with cancer. But Lucas said he changed the beneficiary. 3 weeks ago, right after my last round of test results showed the cancer spreading to my liver. Her voice was ice cold. He was betting on me dying, Frederick. Counting on it, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. He wanted you to give up the experimental treatment. He wanted me to die quickly and quietly so he could collect $50 million. And Frederick, I think he's been influencing my treatment decisions from the beginning. What do you mean? Remember when Dr. Thompson first recommended aggressive chemotherapy? Hamilton talked me out of it, said it was too harsh, that I should consider gentler alternatives. The gentler alternatives didn't work. Exactly. When radiation was recommended, he said it might be too much for someone my age. When the experimental immunotherapy was mentioned 6 months ago, he said it was too risky, too experimental. The pieces were falling into place in the most horrible way. He's been sabotaging your treatment. He's been steering me toward dying as quickly as possible. And Frederick, Lucas showed me something else. She pulled out newspaper clippings, obituaries, legal documents. Hamilton has done this before. 4 other women over the past 6 years. All wealthy, all with serious medical conditions, all dead within 18 months of starting relationships with him. Jesus. Patricia Hendricks, Jennifer Morrison, Sarah Chen, Michelle Rodriguez, all cancer patients, all isolated from their families, all dead with Hamilton Pierce as their sole beneficiary. The hospital room felt like it was closing in around us. The monitors beeped steadily, but everything else felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Rosalind, what are you going to do? I'm going to fight. The experimental therapy, the aggressive treatment, all of it. I'm going to use my own money to save my own life. And Hamilton? Her eyes turned hard as diamonds. Hamilton is about to learn what happens when you bet against someone who refuses to lose. She reached into the bedside table and pulled out a legal document. I've already started. This is a new will, Frederick, and new power of attorney documents, and new beneficiary forms for that insurance policy. Rosalind, I made one other call today, to Bradley. My heart stopped. What did you tell him? Retry P, continue edit. I told him to come to Denver immediately, that we needed to have a family meeting about his inheritance. My stomach dropped. What exactly did you say? I told him that I'd discovered some irregularities in my financial affairs, that Hamilton had been managing things differently than I thought, that there were decisions to be made about the estate. When is he coming? Tomorrow afternoon. And Frederick? She reached for my hand. I want you there when I tell him the truth. About everything. About Hamilton. About the money. About what I've decided to do with the rest of my life. Are you sure you're ready for that conversation? I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The next morning, I sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking coffee that tasted like burnt water and trying to prepare for what was coming. In 18 hours, Bradley would walk into room 314, expecting to discuss his inheritance. Instead, he was going to discover that everything he thought he knew about money, family, and love was wrong. Dr. Pierce showed up at 11 a.m. earlier than usual. He walked into Rosalind's room like he owned it. Expensive suit, confident smile, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Good morning, darling. How are you feeling? Better. Much better. Frederick and I have been talking. Dr. Pierce glanced at me with barely concealed irritation. Perhaps Frederick should give us some privacy. We have medical decisions to discuss. Actually, Frederick is staying. He's going to be involved in all my medical decisions from now on. Rosalind, I think you're confused. I have power of attorney over your medical care. Had, past tense. I've made some changes. She handed him a legal document. His face went pale as he read it. This removes me as your power of attorney. It does. But darling, you're not thinking clearly. The medication affects your judgment. You need someone with medical expertise making these decisions. I need someone who wants me to live making these decisions. The room went dead silent. Dr. Pierce stared at Rosalind like she'd spoken in a foreign language. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about Patricia Hendricks, and Jennifer Morrison, and the others. Dr. Pierce's confident facade cracked. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Just like I think you know about the $50 million life insurance policy you took out on me. The one where you changed the beneficiary to yourself 3 weeks ago. Rosalind, you're being paranoid. The cancer medication can cause confusion. The confusion is over, Hamilton. Everything is very clear now. Dr. Pierce looked around the room like a trapped animal. At me, at Rosalind, at the door. If you'll excuse me, I have other patients to see. You have FBI agents to see. They'll be contacting you this afternoon. He bolted, actually ran out of the room, leaving his expensive briefcase behind. Rosalind and I sat in silence for a moment. Well, she said finally, that went better than expected. Bradley arrived the next evening with Victoria in an attitude that could cut glass. They walked into room 314 like they owned the place. Designer clothes, expensive luggage, matching irritation at being summoned to a hospital room when they had better things to do with their weekend. Mom, you look... Bradley paused, clearly surprised by how much better she looked. You look good. The treatment is working? The treatment is working wonderfully. Sit down, both of you. We need to discuss your inheritance. Bradley's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This was the conversation he'd been waiting for his entire adult life. Finally. I've been thinking we should discuss trust structures to minimize tax implications. Victoria's family attorney has some excellent suggestions about offshore holdings, Bradley, stop talking and listen. The sharpness in Rosalind's voice surprised everyone, including me. This wasn't the weak, medicated woman who'd been apologizing for being a burden. This was someone who'd rediscovered her backbone. There are things you need to know about your grandfather's estate. Things that Hamilton never told you. Things I only learned this week. She gestured to the chair beside her bed. Sit. Both of you. Bradley sat reluctantly. Victoria remained standing, checking her phone like she had somewhere more important to be. You know about the $92 million? Of course. It's been our family's security blanket for years, the foundation of everything we've planned for our future. And what did you think when your father was working 3 jobs to pay for my medical care? Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Honestly, I thought Dad was being dramatic, making unnecessary sacrifices. I figured you had medical insurance through Hamilton, that most of it was covered. You figured wrong. Rosalind pulled out the bank statements that Lucas had provided, months of documentation showing the systematic plundering of her accounts. Bradley, every dollar your father spent on my treatment came from his own pocket. Every loan he took, every extra job he worked, every sacrifice he made was real and necessary, while I had more than enough money to pay for the best medical care in the world. Bradley stared at the documents like they were written in Sanskrit. I don't understand. Hamilton stole my money, all of it. He's been systematically transferring it into accounts under his control for 18 months, and he let your father destroy his life paying for treatments that should have been covered by my own funds. Victoria stepped forward, suddenly interested. She was a pharmaceutical heiress. She understood financial statements better than most people understood their own checkbooks. These transfers, she said, studying the papers, some of them are for millions of dollars. When did these happen? Over the past 18 months, while I was living with Hamilton, while he had power of attorney over my finances, while he was telling me I was broke. Bradley was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Mom, are you saying Dr. Pierce is a thief? I'm saying Dr. Pierce is a criminal who targets wealthy women with serious medical conditions. I'm saying he's done this to at least 4 other women. I'm saying he took out a $50 million life insurance policy on me and was betting on me dying as quickly as possible. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it, Bradley. Every time a doctor recommended aggressive treatment, what did Hamilton say? Bradley's face went pale. He said it was too risky, too expensive, that you should focus on quality of life instead of quantity. Exactly. He was steering me toward dying so he could collect insurance money. Victoria looked up from the financial documents. Bradley, this is serious. This man was systematically defrauding your mother. There's more, Rosalind continued. I've made some changes to my estate planning. Significant changes. She reached into her bedside table and pulled out a thick legal envelope. I've rewritten my will. I've changed all my beneficiary designations. I've revoked Hamilton's power of attorney and given it to someone who actually loves me. Bradley leaned forward. Who? Your father. The room went dead silent. Mom, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. But Dad he's broke. He lives in a studio apartment. He works minimum wage jobs. He works minimum wage jobs because he spent every penny he had saving my life. He lives in a studio apartment because he lost everything paying for my medical care, while I had $90 million sitting in accounts I didn't know existed. Bradley stood up abruptly. This is crazy. You're making decisions based on guilt and medication. I'm making decisions based on 24 years of marriage to a man who sold everything he owned to keep me alive, including his future. Mom, please. Just think about this logically. Dad doesn't know how to manage money. He's never had money. If you give him $90 million, he'll lose it all within 5 years. Will he? Or will he use it the same way he's used everything else in his life, to take care of the people he loves? Victoria was studying the new will documents. Bradley, I think your mother has made up her mind. Vic, you don't understand. This changes everything. Our wedding, our future, our entire financial plan. Maybe that's the point, Rosalind said quietly. The will reading was scheduled for March 3rd, 2022, 1 week after Rosalind passed away peacefully in her sleep. She died the way she'd lived those final weeks, surrounded by people who actually loved her. Me on one side of the hospital bed, Bradley on the other, holding her hands as she slipped away at 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. In those final days, something fundamental had shifted in Bradley. The designer clothes disappeared, replaced by simple jeans and sweaters. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by something quieter, more thoughtful, more real. "Dad, I owe you an apology," he said the night before she died. We were sitting in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m., drinking coffee that tasted like burnt water and trying to process the fact that we were about to lose the woman who'd shaped both our lives. "You don't owe me anything, son." "Yes, I do. I owe you everything, and I threw it all away because I was ashamed of who we were, ashamed of being normal people with normal problems." "Bradley, why did money become so important to you?" He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup like it might contain answers. "Do you remember when I was 12 and the Henderson family invited me to their vacation house in Aspen? I remember. Their house was like something from a magazine. Staffed to do everything, cars worth more than most people's houses, everything perfect and clean and expensive. When I got home, our little rental house felt like a prison." He looked up at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much older. "I was embarrassed to have friends over. Embarrassed that you drove a 15-year-old Honda with a dented bumper. Embarrassed that we shopped at Goodwill and clipped coupons and counted every dollar. You never said anything, because I loved you, both of you. But I also resented you for not being successful, for not giving me the life I saw other kids having." He rubbed his eyes, exhausted from days of sitting vigil. "When I got to college and saw how the wealthy kids lived, I decided I'd never be poor again. Never be embarrassed again. I'd do whatever it took to join their world, even if it meant leaving your family behind. Even then, and Dad, the worst part, it worked. Victoria's family accepted me. I got promoted. I made money. I had the life I thought I wanted." "What changed? Watching you these past 2 weeks, the way you cared for Mom, the way you forgave her for everything, the way you forgave me even after I told you to disappear from our lives." He looked directly at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy in his face. I realized I'd spent 10 years running away from the best parts of who I am. The parts that came from you. The funeral was small, maybe 40 people who actually knew Rosalind, not the society crowd that Dr. Pierce had introduced her to. Dr. Pierce himself was notably absent. He was meeting with federal investigators about fraud charges that would eventually send him to prison for 23 years. Victoria came to the funeral but sat in the back, distant and uncomfortable. She'd broken off their engagement 2 days after learning that Bradley wouldn't be inheriting $90 million. Some relationships, it turned out, were more transactional than others. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered at Lucas Collins's law office for the reading of the will. Bradley seemed nervous as we walked into the mahogany-paneled conference room. Not excited like I'd expected. Nervous. "Dad, whatever Mom decided, I want you to know I understand why she did it." "What do you mean?" "I mean I finally learned the difference between earning something and deserving it." He straightened his tie. Not a designer tie, just a simple blue one from Target. "And Dad, I hope you can forgive me someday, for all of it." "I already have, son." The conference room felt different this time, smaller somehow, more intimate, just family and the people who mattered. Lucas Collins entered at exactly 2 p.m. with his leather portfolio and the same professional demeanor he'd maintained through everything. But I caught him looking at me with something that might have been approval. "Gentlemen, we're here to read the last will and testament of Rosalind Sterling, dated February 20th, 2022. Bradley took a deep breath and reached for my hand. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Lucas Collins opened his portfolio with the ceremonial precision of a man who'd delivered life-changing news for 30 years. "Thank you for coming. We're here to read the last will and testament of Rosalind Sterling, dated February 20th, 2022. He pulled out official documents, notarized and witnessed, the legal framework that would determine the rest of our lives. I, Rosalind Sterling, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." Bradley sat perfectly still beside me. No longer the confident heir apparent, just a son waiting to learn how his mother had judged his life. First, I want to acknowledge the profound betrayal I discovered in the final months of my life. Dr. Hamilton Pierce systematically stole my money, manipulated my medical care, and planned to profit from my death through fraudulent insurance policies. I hope the federal investigators find everything they need to ensure he faces justice for what he did to me and the other women he victimized. Lucas paused, letting that sink in. Dr. Pierce's crimes had made the Denver Post's front page 3 days earlier. The FBI had found evidence linking him to 6 different cases of financial elder abuse, with total theft exceeding $200 million. Second, to my son Bradley Sterling, I leave $1 million from my liquid assets, along with this letter explaining the choices I've made. Lucas handed Bradley a sealed envelope. His hands shook slightly as he took it. Bradley, you chose money over love, status over family, embarrassment over loyalty. But you're young, and people can change. Use this money not to buy things you don't need, but to build a life based on who you are, not what you own. Your father never stopped believing in you. Neither have I. $1 million, a fortune to most people, but Bradley had been expecting $92 million. I watched his face carefully, looking for disappointment or anger, but saw only something that looked like relief. To Frederick Sterling, my former husband, and the only man who ever loved me without conditions, I leave the remainder of the estate. Lucas pulled out another document, this one thick with legal attachments and property descriptions. This includes my 40% ownership in Sterling Medical Properties, currently valued at $62 million. It includes my legitimate life insurance policy through Mutual of Denver, valued at $50,000. It includes all liquid assets recovered from Dr. Pierce's fraudulent accounts, currently estimated at $30 million. The numbers felt surreal, like someone was reading statistics about a stranger's life. Total estimated value, $92,400,000. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching this happen to someone else. $92 million, more money than I'd ever imagined existing, let alone owning. Lucas continued reading. Frederick, you gave up everything for me. Your career, your health, your financial security, your future. You worked yourself to exhaustion while I lived with a man who was stealing from me. You loved me when I didn't deserve it and stayed when I told you to go. My vision blurred. These were Rosalind's words, but hearing them read aloud in that formal setting felt like receiving a message from another world. You sold everything you owned to pay for medical treatments that my own money should have covered. You sacrificed 20 years of academic work, your retirement, your health, even your relationship with our son. You did this not because you expected anything in return, but because that's who you are. Bradley was crying now, quiet tears rolling down his cheeks as he listened to his mother's final assessment of both our lives. Use this money wisely, Frederick, not to buy things you don't need, but to build the life you sacrificed for me. Help families who are facing the same impossible choices you faced. Show the world what love looks like when it's not conditional on success or status or social approval. Lucas looked up from the document. And if you choose to forgive our son, please help him learn the difference between having wealth and having worth. He's a good man who lost his way, but good men can find their way back with the right guidance. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of Bradley trying to control his crying. Lucas set down the will and picked up another document. There's one final item. Mrs. Sterling also established a foundation with specific instructions for its management. He handed me a folder marked Sterling Family Foundation. She's allocated $20 million for medical assistance grants for families dealing with catastrophic illness. The foundation is to be managed jointly by Frederick Sterling and Bradley Sterling, assuming both parties agree. I looked at Bradley. His face was streaked with tears, but his eyes were clear for the first time in years. Dad, he said, quietly, I'd be honored to work with you, if you'll have me. Of course I'll have you. You're my son. Lucas smiled, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in all our meetings. Gentlemen, there's one more thing. Mrs. Sterling wanted me to read this final paragraph aloud. He picked up the will again. To anyone who hears this story, love is not measured in dollars, but respect should be. Frederick never asked for anything except the chance to love his family. That's the only inheritance that really matters. That's the only wealth that lasts. Bradley reached over and took my hand. Dad, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that Mom was right about me. That I can be the man you raised me to be. You already are, son. You already are. Outside the law office, Denver traffic hummed in the afternoon sun. Normal life continuing for normal people with normal problems. But inside that conference room, two men who'd lost their way had finally found their way back to each other, and $92 million was just the beginning of that story, not the end. 8 months later, I was standing in the office of the Sterling Family Foundation, looking over grant applications from families facing the same impossible choices I'd faced 3 years earlier. The foundation operated out of a modest building near the hospital. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive. Just a place where people could come when they needed help and couldn't afford to wait for bureaucracy to save them. We'd helped 93 families in 8 months, covered experimental treatments that insurance companies wouldn't approve, paid for caregivers who were sacrificing everything to save someone they loved, provided housing for families who'd traveled across the country seeking treatment. Every success felt like a small victory against the universe's tendency to make love expensive. Bradley found me there on a Thursday afternoon in October, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt that he'd bought at Target. The designer clothes were gone forever, along with the life they represented. Dad, the Martinez family called. Elena's treatment is working. The leukemia is in complete remission. That's wonderful news. The father wanted to thank you personally. He said you saved his daughter's life. We saved his daughter's life. Bradley had been working with the foundation since May, 3 months after the will reading. Not for money. He'd refused to take a salary, living instead off his mother's $1 million inheritance while he figured out who he wanted to be. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever regret it? The way things turned out? I thought about his question. It was one I'd been asking myself for months. What do you mean? I mean, you could have taken the money and disappeared, bought a mansion somewhere, traveled the world, lived like a king. Instead, you're giving most of it away to strangers. Bradley, what do you think made me happier? Working 3 jobs to pay for your mother's treatment, or knowing that she was alive? Knowing she was alive. And what makes me happy now? Having $90 million in the bank, or knowing that we're keeping other families together? He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since he was a child. Keeping families together. That's the difference between having wealth and having worth. Your mother taught me that, even if it took her dying for me to fully understand it. We worked together for the rest of the afternoon, reviewing applications, calling hospitals, coordinating care for people who were discovering that love and money intersect in ways that can either destroy you or save you. At 6 o'clock, Bradley packed up his laptop and looked at me across the desk we shared. Dad, would you like to have dinner tonight? Nothing fancy, just father and son. I'd love that. As we walked out of the office together, Bradley said quietly, I'm proud to be your son. I've always been proud to be your father. The Denver sunset painted the mountains gold and purple, the same colors I'd seen from that hospital window during all those long nights when I thought I was losing everything. Sometimes the best inheritance isn't money. Sometimes it's the chance to become the person you were meant to be. Sometimes it's learning that love, when it's real and unconditional, always wins in the end. And sometimes, when you're very lucky, you get a second chance to prove that wealth and worth aren't the same thing at all.